and welcome to the 4 Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined by Matt. Matt, how are you doing this week?
Doing good.
So,
We're down a man.
yeah, Shad is Shad i- Shad is about the countryside and could not make it in time for the episode.
Mm.
So, um,
Shad is in the lovely city of or maybe traveling back, but he was in the lovely city of San Antonio, Texas, where my wife is from, and where I will actually be in like 3 weeks' time because we're going there because my in-laws live there and we're going there for Thanksgiving. San Antonio is wonderful. It sounds like he got some good food. You got to enjoy the city a little bit, at least the downtown area. So I will be there soon, but I'm jealous that he got a head start on that. It's lovely weather down there, I'm sure.
it's been
Um,
warm here. I think it was like 80 today or something.
it got cold, and then it was like it was close. It was in the early, the mid to high 70s today, and it's going to be I think like 81 tomorrow, and then like 70s again on Thursday, and then right back to cold
Yeah, I know. So we have a
or
fun.
chilly. Like it's going to be like low 60s, but mm,
Yeah. So we have a fun show for you today. So this is what I like to call the election-free live stream tonight. So we'll not be discussing anything election related.
I am
Um,
wearing a like American flag themed shirt representing Tecmo Bowl, one of the greatest 8-bit video games of all time.
I
So
actually,
that's as American as you can get right now.
I actually considered getting an Uncle Sam hat to wear for the show, but then I forgot.
Mm. I think
I could have gotten a sticker for like
mm,
my microphone arm. But so we're going to be discussing the 2003 movie Freddy vs. Jason in the main event of the evening. But we do have a couple of quickie little topics to kind of get the show off the ground. So we're going to be discussing first. We did a show on this a couple years ago with our friend Tim, and it's something I would say is sort of near and dear to Matt and I's heart. So we're going to be talking about like who our favorite GI Joes are.
mm. I could do the entire show just on
Yeah, we can do.
talking more about GI Joe.
I would say so. I would say probably my top. He'd be my top three, but I think he's probably one of my favorites. Is Spirit.
Spirit. Sometimes they've changed it where he's like Charlie Iron Knife or
I like
Spirit Iron
Spirit
Knife.
better, but
I think Spirit's fine. As we talked about on the show that we did with Tim, like Spirit is an awesome character. I would he be my I don't know if he'd be my top three, but he's definitely like an amazing Joe because
and
I
he's.
love that. I love go ahead.
I was gonna say, and he's Storm Shadow's true rival, not Snake Eyes.
Yes. Like I don't know if I'm sure it was probably Larry Hama who really gave the backstory and fleshed out most of these characters because he obviously was the writer on the long running G.I. Joe Marvel
Well,
comic. But
he wrote a lot of the the cards.
file cards?
Yeah, he wrote a lot of file cards too.
Yeah, the bio. Yeah. Uh I'm sure it was his characterization, but what I did like about Spirit, and it kind of goes with the whole like his main rivalry is with Storm Shadow, is that Spirit was basically look, my favorite of all time, no surprise, is Snake Eyes, because Snake Eyes is awesome. He's got a cool mask, he's silent, he's a ninja, whatever. But they basically made Spirit is like he could be on Snake Eyes' level because he was incredible like hand-to-hand martial art combat, and he could the gimmick was that he could track anyone anywhere. Like he was elite level, like soldier, just tracker, a kind of a ninja in his own way. And so I love that they did have that. It's not Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes had a weird brotherhood because they both part of like the Irish. How do you pronounce that?
I don't remember.
The yeah, the Irish Kanaj or something like that.
They had like a
Um,
they were an it was an interesting dynamic for a children's cartoon because I would say the couple episodes they did on the two of them, they they respected each other. Like
yeah,
they were like on opposite ends, but they had like an almost like gentleman's like relationship and respect for each other, which I think was like a relative rarity to have that kind of nuance in like a cartoon at the
yeah.
time.
But Spirit and Storm Shadow having like a great rivalry, I think was really cool. And I think Spirit was an awesome character, kind of almost underutilized in some
I
respects.
think so. Because I think
Yeah.
the one thing, and it's something I try to push in discussions and stuff, but like with all of like today's talk about like inclusion and like diversity and like stuff like that, like GI Joe doesn't get
Mhm.
enough credit for like how ahead of the curve they were, like how like many different walks of life like everyone came about, like even characters you might not even realize, like who's another actual favorite of mine, but like Shipwreck's Hispanic.
Oh yeah. Hector Elizondo is
Yeah.
his real name. Yeah, Shipwreck is actually a Shipwreck's up there too. I loved his toy. His toy, he just had like the little like the longshoreman one, but he was awesome in the cartoon. He was kind of doing they kind of had him do almost like a Jack Nicholson
You
type
know,
of
I listened to the
impression.
voice actor talk about
But
getting that role because it's
mm,
oh, I can't think of his name. He's in everything though, and he was talking about that he auditioned for it and they kind of didn't like it, and then I don't know, he was doing, I don't know if he did the Jack Nicholson thing like at their like somehow he did it and they're like, no, that's what we want for the character
mhm.
because it gave him like a real personality. And I was just thinking, Tunnel Rat's like is Tunnel Rat Korean? I can't remember. I just looked.
I think Tunnel Rat is actually is supposed to be Korean.
Yeah,
Is he? I mean, is he supposed to be kind of the XB4 Larry Hama?
maybe.
Because I don't know that it could also be Quick Kick. Um, because Larry Hama is leave. Well, he's I think he's was born in New York, but I think ethnically he maybe have Japanese ancestry. Actually,
Yeah,
let me look this up.
and
But
he's a
um,
Vietnam vet, I think.
he is Vietnam legitimate. That's why I said like maybe Tunnel Rat was like his kind of XP in the GI Joe world because Tunnel Rat does kind of have that um, Vietnam tunnel kind of vibe to him. Let me see. I'm trying to look it up in real time. Larry Hammond's background.
And who was who was, because I just watched the scene
Yeah,
from the
because
movie because
he was in Vietnam. He was in the army.
I was just laughing at it from the
Mhm.
movie, the guy that had the dog, Law and Order,
Oh, Law and Order.
because he's also Hispanic, but the scene in the movie, he's like, you know, like he finds the bombs, I drive the car, like we tried it the other way around but it didn't work.
Or, yeah, I love the movie. The movie was like a ton of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
and
and they
Big Lob, I love Big Lob. Big Lob is
big
such an
big Lob.
underutilized guy in that, and the
They
Slaughters
I think that
Marauders.
yeah. Oh my God, Slaughter's well, the Renegades was Slaughter's group in the movie, who were awesome. And the toy, they did a 3-pack of the toy. It was Mercer, Taurus, and Red Dog. And
Mhm.
because back in the day, like when I had all these GI Joes, I used them as like kind of like my recipe. I just had those 3 guys just mauling everyone else. I had them as faces, but they were just like badasses because I love the movie, and they were just like total. They just kicked the shit out of all the Cobra
They actually used Mercer in the
people in the movie. So I
they
just had them just like mauling people.
they just used Mercer in the revamped comic with Joshua
Oh
Williamson. He was
really?
in the Duke series because the Duke series was really interesting because they kind of start him out as this like conspiracy theorist because it's like the Energon verse. So like
Hmm.
Duke was like an active service guy and he saw a transformer. He saw like Thundercracker
Oh,
because they haven't started the GI
okay.
Joe
Yeah, because
proper
they're trying
yet.
to. Okay. Yeah, because I mean they're allegedly and they're doing. I know it's I'm sure it's not quite the same universe, but they're supposed to be doing a GI Joe Transformer crossover movie. Like that's the
Yeah,
next.
I don't.
I love GI Joe. That's one of my favorite properties as a kid, and I enjoy Transformers too. So like I'm okay with the movie. I saw Transformers Beast Wars not that. long ago, and I thought it was fine. Like I enjoyed it. Was it the best? Like no, but it was fun for what it was. But yeah, I thinking about like the G.I. Joe comic book, the one that they did like at this point, like probably 15 years ago. I don't know if it's Springwave, whatever, but when they basically had Cobra. I thought it was an interesting take because they had Cobra essentially. They were a terrorist organization,
They were like a
but they were
real
kind of like
estate scheme, weren't they? Like that. That
kind of, but it was like kind of clandestine where it's like it was kind of Cobra as it was forming, and not that it was the same like conspiracy theory type of thing, but it was almost like they would do things and they were almost like a secret organization where only like CIA level or military level people even understood that these things were happening. Like a terrorist attack would maybe happen and Cobra was behind it, but he didn't know anything about it. The general population didn't know anything about it, which I mean, I guess in the context of G.I. Joe back in the 80s, like, yeah, like these military operations wouldn't necessarily be like national news, perhaps. Like, but I don't know. I thought it was a really interesting take. They kind of tried to make it a little more like realistic.
well, I like one of the
But it
things
was
I like
fun.
about Cobra. One of the things I like about Cobra, and they've stayed pretty true to that, even in the cartoon, because there's episodes like the thing I like about Cobra is if you're like an agent of Cobra, like even a grunt, like Cobra treats you really well. Like you get like amazing health insurance. They like pay you well. There's like an episode where they have like a recreational facility they can just go chill at whenever they want to, like in the Arctic or something.
Yeah, I liked, yeah, I like the concept that they would do, and it wasn't. Sometimes I guess it depends upon the writer how consistent it was, but they've kind of done this with different versions of it in the different comic book series or whatever. But I like that they basically, when they present Cobra like that, or kind of cultish, but kind of in the way that it's like, look, you're just trying. They call us terrorists, but we're actually trying to make the world a better place, and they treat the individual Cobra people well, which in look, it makes sense because why if this was all just an army of mercenaries, then they would probably be a little more like, I'm gonna bail because I don't want to get thrown in prison for like the rest of my life because some government agency is hot ass versus like, oh, we're true believers to the cause because and you also treat us quite well. Like that makes more sense, makes a logical sense, but also kind of again, you talk about wrestling, you break down the veil of suspending disbelief. It's like, well, you can kind of almost for a universe that's kind of like quasi-military, quasi like science fiction, all sorts of things. You have like android troopers. It's like, I mean, you got forget even like the fantastical elements, like Cobra Law, whatever, like that. You have if you kind of make it kind of seem plausible, like this could maybe even happen in real life, like it kind of to me, I think it heightens it. It adds more like to it. It
Yeah,
makes the characters more
because
interesting. It makes Cobra more interesting.
and it makes it more realistic. Like what I hate is like shows where like the bad guys like the beatings will continue until
Mm,
morale improves, like those kind of organizations where like failures treated like instant
yeah.
death. Like you don't build loyalty that way. Like an organization wouldn't work that way. Like I think it's more interesting to have a like if you captured a trooper, be like, why are you fighting with Cobra, and the guy being like, have you seen my 401k, like
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like
I,
people, like as a kid that might seem boring, but like as an adult it's like, yeah, okay, like
so this is like a weird aside, and I'm not trying to go into a different tangent with a different universe, but if you recall, like back in the day, like in the 90s, reading the Dark Force trilogy for Star Wars when they started the whole Star Wars expanded universe,
mhm.
and they introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn, who was very popular. That was to me something that really was interesting because if you had failure, Grand Admiral Thrawn is basically like, oh, that sucked. Like that was terrible, but he would still actually reward or treat his men with kind of respect and like there was a discipline and everything. Whereas you saw like the Star Wars movies, it's like Darth Vader, it's like, oh, you failed me. Like let me force choke you to death immediately. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, they're not bad bosses as the trope goes, but I did like that about I like that kind of subversion. It's almost like a subversion of the whole like bad boss thing, like failure will not be tolerated.
Yeah.
with Cobra, where it's like, they, but I'm trying to think. Like, there's lots of GI Joes that I love. Maybe I'll give a Cobra. Like, I actually like Cobra Commander, but I like it when they portray. Even though I loved the cartoon version of Cobra Commander, that he was basically just a scenery chewing coward at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I like it when they present Cobra Commander as actually like lethally like brilliant and a charismatic leader and someone who's incredibly dangerous. Like, it's kind of like the dichotomy, because in the cartoon he was kind of like a coward, but I like it when they present him as like, you think that he might be like a coward or just save his own skin, but he actually is like incredibly smart, conniving, almost like a charismatic cult leader. I think they were trying. This was a lot of his characterization in the 80s, at least in the comic, was of course coming after like Jonestown. So I can see
Yeah.
perhaps where there was a little bit of like Jim Jones like influence, because some of the stuff in the certainly in the Marvel comic books, it did get kind of almost like cultish. Because I think his backstory there, that was almost just like a note. He was like a failed businessman who decided to kind of form this like organization that then blossomed to this like massive international terrorist organization. So
Yeah, I didn't like the he was like a scientist that like was in an accident that the movie did. I just ignore that.
the movie was good because I mean, for those who never seen the GI Joe animated movie, the backstory was that, yeah, not only was he like a scientist, but he was not even like technically human. He was part of some, like, I don't know if it was considered to be an offset, like off, like a different subspecies of humanity
Yeah, I don't think they ever
that
explained it.
they didn't, but he was either a subspecies human or some sort of convergent, evolved, humanoid hominid life form that evolved and came to being in like Cobra Law, which is kind of, I think, presented like supposed to be like in the Himalaya region or someplace like that. And then through the use of like spores, he got mutated and then eventually like went out into the world at the direction of the leader of Cobra Law to kind of take over the world with a terrorist organization. It was very
Yeah.
odd. Even the context of the GI Joe cartoon, it was bizarre. Um,
Well, the cartoon
but you did,
I felt so me personally, once they do the whole like Serpentor series, I feel like the cartoon like went downhill because it got there was always a fine line. The cartoon always had sci-fi elements, but I feel like post
mm,
Serpentor it went too deep into the sci-fi and it just got goofy after that. Especially when they like did the post stuff like I think with Deke, like those cartoons are not as good as like the original stuff.
oh, are you talking about the one where they brought Cobra Commander back?
Yeah, like when they changed like the animation style and they changed the theme song.
Yeah, that was when I think that was like Sunbow. When they brought it back in the early 90s, it was like after the animated movie, they brought it back for like a run.
Mhm.
Um, Cobra Commander was in. They sort of demutated Cobra Commander. It was still implied that underneath he had like on. They actually made a toy of it, but it was like this kind of silver war, and it was kind of implied that underneath that he was kind of still like essentially like a humanoid snake,
Yeah.
but it was kind of more back to normal and cognitively was more like a human being again. But yeah, I think they did a series of that. This was his right hand. Maybe Destro was still. I don't remember. They had like one
Maybe
of the
that's when
characters in
Destro
Metalhead
got
was
that
kind of like
weird. They did the weird like I think orange face with Destro or whatever.
maybe it was weird. It wasn't like as good as even like
No.
the 80s
That's when
animated
like
show, but
guys like
I still watched it
Metalhead.
because I love GI Joe.
Yeah,
But,
same.
yeah, Metalhead. He was kind of like the comic relief because he was kind of presented as just like a big dumb oaf
Yeah.
that was constantly screwing up. It's like that, which is a trope that is oftentimes in kids' TV shows. You have like the villain, he has like some sort of bumbling sidekick.
Yeah, I have it all on DVD. I need to watch it.
I don't know if I have that. Maybe I do. I
I
have
have
like
it. I have it
I
all.
s- I certainly have at least like the entire regular
You can get that all in a set for like super cheap, I think.
80s GI Joe on DVD. I don't know if I have the Sunbow. Hmm.
Yeah, I have the
Um,
season. Those are, I think, unofficially season 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, or something like that. But I have those too.
hmm.
Because it's weird. Because you have
Um,
you have there's like a mini series which is like the beginning. Then you have like
hmm.
the 65 that came after that, and I don't remember if like Serpentor's thing is like considered its own like season, and then you have the Sunbow stuff.
I don't know if that was or just like it was a mini. I don't know if it was a season or like a. Yeah, I think I remember when they would break it up for the this syndicated cartoon show. It was like a 5-part series, like Rise or Pentor Rise. And I'm sure if you probably watched everything together, it's probably like maybe 100 minutes. It could have
It would
been
be
like
like a
short,
movie.
sort of maybe.
Yeah.
Um, I felt it was really more just more like a a running story in the show. But anyway, um, for characters that I actually liked, I mean, I had to separate like the toy versus the actual like what you would see either in the comic books or the cartoon because that could be different. Like there was tons of toys
Yeah,
obviously that didn't
because
either make it.
they killed off a whole bunch of people in
Oh
the
yeah,
comic. Because there's that
one of the
there's that one
God.
special mission and like special missions where like that saw viper like just
Mm.
annihilated like 8 guys in a pit.
Oh, and that was so notorious that that's still like today, at least in the GI Joe fandom, it's still notorious. Like Saw Viper is still like a thing. Like it because I actually think I just pre-ordered it. They actually the current GI Joe toy line, GI Joe
Hmm.
Classified,
The
which
one
is obviously
they're milking to death
yeah
right now because it's the only thing that's still making money.
they are, and I grumble because it's like every month, every other month at the latest, they'll be like, hey, we got new GI Joe products, and it's like I'm excited, but I'm also like I just I don't have all this disposable income. I got 2 small
Yeah, I
kids. I don't
don't,
have all this disposable income for myself. So it's like
because I just
I
gave up
literally just
because
paid off my credit card from all the other purchases.
there's that one summer and they've not like slowed down. I swear there was one summer it felt like over the course of 3 weeks they released like a lab and like 20 figures for
Oh, they
pre-order
did a
all
lot.
this. Yeah.
They got stupid, but but they just did it. Not in the last month. They did another like pre-order of figures, and one of them was Saw Viper. And it was like, oh my God, Saw Viper, and it's like, yeah, like literally, we're probably like 25 years at least, maybe 30 after that comic, where Saw Viper just mows down a bunch of Joes. That that character is still like he's not just like a random Viper. It's still like a thing. So
Yeah.
that was really people were really excited. Speaking of the GI Joe classified toy line, because it's the new figures, but they're 6-inch scale. One of the figures that was always like, and this kind of goes towards your like even like in the toy, the fantastical elements got weird. They did a figure, and I had the figure as a kid, but it was wrapped towards you. Remember that? It's a dude who literally is dressed in like a covered costume, and it's the most ridiculous thing, right?
I might have had
They
that
did a
one.
toy. The toy is like routinely like mocked as like what were they thinking? Like this is so dumb. The GI Joe classified line just put out a figure, an updated figure. It's awesome. It is awesome because he looks basically just like the Marvel universe, or at least the Spider-Man cinematic universe version of Vulture.
Hmm.
He's basically the GI Joe version of Vulture. He even has like motorized wings that even look like vultures, where it has like the propellers inside the wing. It's awesome. It's an awesome figure. And it's like, damn, like even if a goofy ass figure that it's like, how does this really fit with the whole military theme? But it's still kind of awesome. So props to them. Like they took a goofy ass figure and actually made him look cool.
Yeah. I think we can throw out every kid's favorite too is Roadblock.
Oh, Roadblock was really, really fun. I liked how again, they were kind of smart that they did things that would make characters stand out because they always had him in the cartoon like rhyme. And it's like it was kind of dumb and goofy, but it's like you remember it. Like I remember it. Like at this point, like a 35 to 40-year-old show, and I still remember like he was big, jacked black dude who just beat the shit out of people,
He
and it
always
was
had
goofy and
his.
fun.
He liked his big guns too.
Oh yeah.
Because there's always that
Uh,
there's that kind of, I would say it's like the iconic comic image of him where he's like standing on, it's either rubble or like a tank, and he just has this big fucking gun he's holding. Like that's kind
oh
of the
yeah,
iconic roadblock, I would say, image.
yeah. But speaking of Roblox, I wanted to expound upon this point, and we discussed it in the show we did with Tim. But it's worth repeating because obviously nowadays, there's a lot of talk of like shows. Does a property or a show have inclusion? Sometimes it's uncharitably. It's like, oh, is this show woke? Because is how much diversity does it have? But this was this was something that GI Joe did. Like I would essentially say effortlessly because they had a ton of essentially minority characters in, and really it's why wouldn't they? Because if you actually
Well,
look
they're
at our
trying to
real
sell
life,
toys. So, I mean, yeah,
they're trying to sell toys, but if you look at our real life military, like I don't know how many people they're in the military or how much exposure to the military you have. Like I have actually some really good friends. I have one really, really good friend that I'm close to. He's the godfather of my oldest child, and he is a colonel in the military. And because of him, I have been exposed to many different people in the military. I've made friends with a lot of guys that he knows in the military. I have another friend who is the father of my oldest daughter's best friend. He is a former Marine. So through him, I've met even more military people. I've known a ton of military people. And it is exactly like that. It's the G.I. Joe is exactly like that, where it's like literally just about every nationality, or not, well, nationality is not the way to, but ethnicity. Like there are uh, white individuals like that, African Americans, Latino and Hispanic individuals, Asian, like it runs the whole gamut. And that's exactly how GI Joe was, but it wasn't done that it was like this is a big deal. Oh, shipwrecks Latino or
yeah.
Hispanic. It's like that's just part of what his background is, but it's not a thing.
And I also
Um,
liked, the with GI Joe. Going along with that is like everyone
yeah.
had like a purpose within the organization, and they were very careful to make sure like I'll use a great
Mm,
example of a character I actually like and think she's underrated, but Cover Girl is like their PR person.
mm,
Like
hmm.
just the fact that they had the wherewithal to have like their kind of like press agent, like, and make a figure out of that.
Yeah. But that's another point though. Like Scarlet, Cover Girl, Lady J. These are all female GI Joes who were awesome because they kicked the shit out of they kicked Cobra's ass. They were presented in a strong fashion,
Jinx later.
and Jinx. Oh, Jinx is great. I love Jinx in the GI Joe movie. It, it's it it's really funny because sometimes it feels like so many people like in entertainment they struggle, and it's like it's not really that hard. You just you present them as cool, and you have them do cool things, and then that naturally people will start enjoying this and appreciating it.
Yeah, and I
And
would
it's not that
argue,
hard. It
I
really
would
isn't.
legitimately argue that if you go to the Cobra side, the Baroness is the most competent member of Cobra and the most successful.
Yeah, yeah. And she's also the most like rational, level-headed.
Yeah.
She's kind of more like Cobra Commander will be crazy, or Destro will be like have some scheme, whatever like that. And she may be like, no, this is dumb. It's
Like, what are
dumb.
you doing?
It's like, shut up.
What
We're gonna do this. And it's like, oh my God.
what's the name
It
of
should be
the
like, you're gonna fail, Cobra Commander.
what's the name of the female dreadnought? I love the dreadnoughts, but um
Zorana?
I think so.
Yeah, Zorana is Zartan's sister.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Um, I love the. They're a little too. I think someone now coming into it, they're a little too. I would say of like that late '70s, early '80s punk culture to like really land with someone now.
Oh, but
They're so
I
great.
love the Dreadnoks though. They're so fun. The cartoon will always hold the one episode, which you know I'm talking about. It will always hold a deep appreciation in my heart for Cold Slither. That's
Yeah, I know.
awesome.
I post that
I
sometimes.
actually
I always post
I
that in
actually own
random
a
places, and I'm like, "Hail Satan!" as I like,
um
and
there's a design. I forget who the artist is, but if you go on the website T Public, which you can Google, you can buy this T-shirt. Just search like I'm sure if you search like Dreadnoks, it would come up.
hmm
There is a T-shirt that I own, and it is like the old the Guns N' Roses like cross
yeah,
like the skulls.
that's
They have
hilarious.
that, but it's cold. It's the Dreadnoks is Cold Slither, and it's just like that. It's like this is the most amazing T-shirt. So I actually bought that. I'm like, I have to buy this. It's awesome.
I think the first Zartan figure is one of the most valuable ones because it had that. I think a lot of them got ruined because I think the original one had that gimmick where the skin would change, and I think it
They
got.
had something. Yeah, they did something with the actual like the plastic. There's some additive they put in there that it would change color, which really it was I think just like it was a temperature thing. Like if you
Yeah,
submerged it in like cold,
yeah,
it would like the plastic would turn bluish, and then if you expose it to sunlight, which really was just like something that would heat it up.
yeah,
Like you could hold it in your hands. The ambient body temperature of your hands would, and it would
yeah.
turn like flesh colored.
But I think a lot of those got ruined because I had quite a few friends that had one. Like, oh yeah, it got left in the sun like too long, and it like permanently like changed the color. So I think that one's
Yeah,
one of the
probably.
more valuable ones because it's harder to find like
It's
in
interesting
good
that
condition.
that, that kind of reminds me like um it makes me think about some of the stuff that they did like back in the day with toys like that, like the gimmicks they did. Because did you ever collect the He-Man toys back in the
Yeah,
day when you were a kid? So did I.
the
I
one
went
the
through
skunk
phases
guy
where
stank.
Stinkor, that's the one
Yeah,
I'm talking. That's what I was thinking of because they made the plastic they used to make Stinkor. That's the He-Man character, which is really just like a repaint of the Merman figure.
oh yeah, it
They
was.
put in the mold of like the plastic, like they put real patchouli oil. But I guess however process they did, maybe they used too much patchouli oil, whatever. But because they did it because it's supposed to like he's a skunk creature, so they're
Yeah,
supposed to stink. But the toys, like people have reported that even now, like decades later, the toys still stink or still smell like patchouli oil, and it's like it really shouldn't probably stink that much after like 30 plus years, but
well,
they do.
you know it's funny. There's a YouTube channel called Toy Federation, which I highly recommend. So he runs a toy
Mm.
shop, and like the videos are people bringing stuff in for trade in and stuff. So someone brought in original strawberry shortcake stuff, and they
Oh
actually
wow.
gave him more money because they still smelled like the
Oh wow.
yeah, like because that's the first thing he's like, oh yeah, they still smell. But there's a funny story. So this is a toy related one, but so when I was dating my wife, we were talking about Teddy Ruxpin, and I'm like, oh, did you have
Mm.
Grubby? And she's like, there was a Grubby. I'm like, yeah, like there was a Grubby, and there was like a cable. Which, fun fact, the cable is the most valuable part of Teddy Ruxpin and Grubby. Um, so if you had the cable,
People
they
don't remember Grubby.
yeah. And she's like, there was a Grubby. Like my parents bought my brother and I a Teddy Ruxpin each, and we could have had Grubby. But fun fact, the cable I think is worth more than the actual toys because the cable's the rarest thing.
So, fun fact about Teddy Ruxpin, like when my wife and I and this is when we were dating, and we've been together now over a decade. But when we were first dating, um, she made some offhand comment about how she loved Teddy Ruxpin, and she never had a Teddy Ruxpin toy growing up, and neither did I. Like, I don't know how much it was. I feel back in the day, Teddy Ruxpin must have been like $50 or something, which nowadays is like a pittance. Like, I have a family of four, and two of them are small kids, but I can easily spend 50 bucks on like DoorDash on a Friday night and not even blink an eye. But back in like the 80s, I think it was like too much money because I never got a toy. I think my parents were probably like, no, that's like too much money. Anyway, she never had a Teddy Ruxpin toy. I never had it, but as an anniversary gift on our first year anniversary, I had actually through eBay bought a working Teddy Ruxpin,
Because they did a reissue,
and
but
I gave
that one was they did a reissue recently, but that one had like demon eyes. Like I hated that one because they like tried to do
it
more with it.
had it had it had weird like well, not animatronic makes it because Teddy Ruxpin the original was like animatronic
Yeah, because
because
his
like he
eyes
had a
opened and he
like
talked.
his
Yeah.
eyes and his mouth, and it was just like very rudimentary. But they had like basically like digital eyes, the redo Teddy Ruxpin,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like LED lights, and it would just like flash, and it's like this is like almost uncanny
Five Nights
valley,
at
even though you're
Freddy.
just a little anthropomorphic teddy bear. Yeah, yeah, it was kind of like that.
Yeah, if you don't
But
know,
long story short, I gave my
if
God.
you're listening and you don't know what the original Teddy Ruxpin is, it's essentially just a tape player with like that the that like talked to like that had the character kind of talk with what it was playing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was like gimmicked where it's specifically had a sequence with the tapes, but it basically he was the body is boxy,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's
he
a
has
tape,
like the
yeah.
the arms and legs. Yeah, and he was animatronic in the sense that the eyes, like he had eyebrows and eyes, and like they would like move around a little bit, and like his little muzzle, just like a little bit like that.
It was
And
probably
he,
so if I had to guess how it worked is
yeah,
the wave forms that the tape produced made the mouth move because I don't know if you could probably put like another tape in like just like a music one and he would probably still talk.
probably. But his back had a tape recorder, and you could like they had specially Teddy Ruxpin stories tapes that you put in
Yeah.
there, and you press the play button, and it would play the story. I'm sure. Actually, I when I bought the Teddy Ruxpin, it was like it had a couple tapes with it. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I'm sure the stories were like 5-10 minutes long. It was not
Yeah, I don't
an hour
remember.
Teddy Ruxpin
If you,
session, but he would talk, and then it'd be like if you're a little kid, it's like he would read the story to you. Teddy
yeah.
Ruxpin would read the
And
story.
if you had Grubby and you had the cable, they would take turns talking, but the cable like everyone lost the cable and it's like a specialized cable. I'd have to
Mm,
look that up. I think it's specialized because I don't think it's just like a double male port like audio cable or something. So I think that's why it has value.
yeah. Um, but to finish my story, I gave this present to my wife on our first year anniversary. Fast forward many years later, we have two kids. We still have Teddy Ruxpin. My oldest daughter became enamored with Teddy Ruxpin, so he just lives in her room. But she's a small child, so she's dropped Teddy Ruxpin and played rough with him many times.
Yeah, he can take a
And so
beating. Oh
Teddy Ruxpin's
no.
eyes though are all wonky. They're all wonky, Brad. They're like kind of like Teddy Ruxpin, God love him, he had like a stroke or something because one eye is like kind of like off to the side, and it's like I don't know what's happening with Teddy Ruxpin. Teddy Ruxpin suffers some trauma,
There's
but he's still there. He's still there.
if she likes Teddy Ruxpin, there is like a cartoon series for it, and there is like a live action movie.
Mm.
If she that I think are on
We'll see.
YouTube
She's
for cheap, for free. So poor
this has
Teddy.
nothing to do with GI Joe or anything
No,
we're
but
talking about or Teddy Ruxpin.
same.
My daughter I like weirdly got into. They did a Curious George TV show
Oh,
in
the
like
one
the
from like
aughts
yeah.
that I actually think it was like Ron Howard did it, but or he executive produced it. But my daughter like was obsessed with it and flew through like I think it had like 6 seasons. She like blew through all of them in like 2-3 months. So
Wasn't there like a Will Ferrell movie?
kids are weird. Uh Yeah, actually, there was a movie in like in the mid aughts, I think, and that's what spawned the TV show. But she hasn't seen the movie.
Because there was like Curious George cartoons when I was a kid, but they were like those ones where like they were reading them, but like there was no like animation. It was just kind of like the image would change.
Yeah,
That's kind of what the Curious George cartoons were when I was a kid. I don't Were those considered cartoons? You know what I'm talking about, right? There were other ones where like it
yeah,
kind of didn't
it's
move like the scene, but the scene would
yeah.
shift.
I mean, I don't really consider those cartoons, but maybe they did. It was but I'm sure it was probably categorized that way.
Yeah, I bet. But let's see. I'm trying to think of other GI Joes that I liked. Flint, I liked. Dusty was always a
Flint was
favorite.
solid.
Bazooka, I kind of consider like Shipwreck and Bazooka. I consider kind of like a tandem of guys.
Yeah, and well, actually, in the cartoon, I think Alpine or
Yeah,
Alpine and Bazooka was kind of like they were kind of like a unit too.
I think Alpine was. I think Alpine was also Hispanic.
No, Alpine was African American.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm thinking of um what's his name? Tripwire or something. I think was.
I don't think so. I'm not sure who you're talking about.
I there's a guy.
Shipwreck
There's a
was
guy
Hispanic Law and Order.
who's there's a guy who I can picture, but I can't remember who he is. It's gonna drive me nuts. But
Hmm.
okay, we'll move on. Bazooka was kind of like was Bazooka. I always kind of consider like he'd be hanging out like in the Bears video from like SNL is kind of what I consider Bazooka to be.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think of anyone else that jumps out at me. Wetsuit, I liked. I always liked his figures.
Wetsuit was pretty cool.
Okay, so
Oh
let's.
man, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I know it's tough. I'm trying not to do like the super obvious ones. I always liked
Well,
Lady
we
J
said
too.
Roadblock. That's
Lady J was always cool in the cartoon
Lady J was pretty cool. I like that.
because
It was weird they did.
she never used like because she
Go
used
ahead.
kind of like antiquated weapons. She used like her bow and arrow, and she had like were they spears that she used a lot, kind of like javelins.
They were kind of like they were like javelins. Which in the context of this show, it's like it's kind of weird. This is like a weapon you use, but okay.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, that stuff always sticks out to you as a kid though if they're doing something a little different.
Were you thinking of Dial Tone?
Might have been dial tone.
But I don't think he was Hispanic because
No, it
his
might not have
file
been
card.
him. I'd have to dig. There's so many guys. Oh, Wild Bill. Wild Bill is a favorite of mine.
Oh, Wild Bill was fun.
Yeah. He doesn't get brought up enough when people talk about Joe's. Because he was kind of,
Yeah.
I feel like he was kind of, he was the takeoff of one of the A Team guys, I think.
Who were the 18 guys? So there was Murdoch, there was Mr. T, BJ Baracus, there was Face, and it was the other guy,
Yeah.
Matt Frewer's character. Like I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I can't. I haven't watched that show in forever. I used to love
Hmm.
that. That was also a favorite of mine. I loved. I mean, I think every kid in our era loved Mr. T. Though
Oh yeah.
he had cereal too. I
It's funny.
always remember the Mr. T
Oh
cereal.
yeah. I had the cereal because you're as a kid you're like oh I need to get this, and I feel like it was not even like good or special.
No, I think it was
And
just
it's really like
whatever.
just
I think it was whatever C3POs were. Like they had like that basic brand, like basic bitch, like grain cereal that sometimes they would chuck marshmallows in, and they would just change the shape every now and then to whatever the brand like because like if you got like the Batman cereal while it was out, that was the same as like the Turtle cereal, as like the Pac-Man cereal, as the whatever.
the funny thing is basically how you know you're no longer a kid you're an adult is like your cereal taste changes because now I don't eat cereal that much, but if I do, it's like granola or like grape nuts or something like that.
Oh God, grape nuts.
You know,
No.
no, like not like Count. It's not Count Chocula or
I
you know
get I get a box of Blueberry
Captain
every year.
Crunch or anything for me anymore.
And
That I've
I if I do cereal, it's
They always
either
sell some of those flavors for Halloween. When
yeah,
we were kids, you could always get Count Chocula. Like Count Chocula was like
yeah.
always in the store, but
So
they stopped making that except for Halloween.
if I do cereal, it's Frosted Flakes, Raisin Bran, or the mini wheats.
Well, I like mini wheats.
Occasionally,
They have like 5 different flavors of mini wheats nowadays. That's just mini wheats.
occasionally,
It's like strawberry, blueberry,
yeah.
maple. I'm like,
Occasionally, I do like maybe once every couple of years. I do get that hankering for the mix of blood and sugar in my mouth. So I do buy a box of Captain Crunch
Captain
because
Crunch.
nothing does tear up the like roof of your mouth like Captain Crunch does.
Ah, you just did a very
You
Midwest
always call me out
rough.
on that.
The
Yes.
rough because you're so Brad is from Ohio. And
Yeah.
it's like I don't feel like you have like this big regional accent, but some like that's the only time. And I actually had when I was growing up, I had a physics teacher who was from like the Midwest, and again, not really an accent, but he really was like, oh, the roof, and I'm like, what? What's a roof? That sounds like a sound a dog would make, but
Oh,
yeah.
I think it was like when we started doing the podcast. I think Justin said he expected me to have like some. I think Justin he said he expected me to have an accent, and I've never figured out what he thought it was going to be, and I've wondered if he thought I was going to sound like I was from like Minnesota or something.
Mm. So I've actually met Justin, friend of the show, Justin, in real life now. And Justin does have the Canadian accent. It's not as exaggerated as like, you see in the movies or whatever, but he does have the Canadian accent and he's kind of from the general area of the Hearts. So he does have like a little bit of that like Hart family
It's
like Canadian accent. It's quite endearing. So
it's funny because there's like some old like radio shows from Canada I like, and
mm,
it like I think it's like with any accent because I think like you see it with like New Yorkers and Boston people here that I meet and know,
mm,
like you don't get it until they do something very specific that makes the regional part of them come out. Like if,
mm.
like my grandmother came over after World War II and she's from Great Britain. And it's funny because you grow up and like she would do like the grandparents thing at schools, and my friends would be like, "Oh, I love your grandmother's like British accent." And I'm like, "What? Like she
Oh
has
yeah.
an accent?" Like, yeah, she has a British accent. I'm like,
Oh
"Oh, that's just how she talks." And like then um like someone had met her and like, "Oh yeah, she didn't sound British until she asked someone for tea. Then she sounded really British."
that so it's funny you say that because my parents were from Augusta, Georgia. And so they had like thick, like Southern accents, like Georgia accents. And it, because I heard them my entire life, like it didn't register to me. Like maybe vaguely, I'm like, oh, they have a different accent than, people here in Washington, D.C., where I grew up. But it kind of came more pronounced like when I was dating my wife. When she finally met my parents, she was like, yeah, like sometimes I can't understand your parents. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, their accent's too thick. Like I can't understand what they're saying sometimes. Like, and not everything they could say, but sometimes it's like I didn't understand this word. And it's like I was like taken aback. So I'm like, what do you mean? Because I heard that my entire life, so it's like this is normal to me. But I guess you don't register it. It's like, oh yeah, they have an accent.
Yeah, it's just how they
It's
talk.
just like, oh, they just yeah, oh, it's how they talk. They're
Yeah.
speaking normally, and it's like, no, they're not. Like
Well,
for
like
someone who's from a different area of the country, like a thick Southern accent is going to be like
I mean, look at me. Like
more noticeable.
I had that concept with someone from a completely different country. So,
Mm,
um, I think it's just I think especially if you're growing up with them and like you're learning to talk, it's just how they talk to you and like. So then, I mean, I still don't know. Like, I still never heard a British accent like for as long as I was alive because it's
mm.
just how she talked. So it's kind of funny
Mhm.
how that stuff works. So we're gonna
Yeah.
go on to our second topic of the night. So this is kind of just a generalized topic. So this is because I would say based on the conversations, like we would be if this podcast was anything, it would be we're WCW fans. Like that's I think how all three of us got our start there. We readily laugh at and admit all the bad things about WCW, but I will always say like even when WCW sucks, like WCW is still like what I consider to be like my home when in wrestling. Like I'll talk about how much I love Memphis and Mid South and like how great I think those promotions are. But if you said like what is like your comfort food of wrestling, it'd be like any era of WCW would be it for me.
I have shared before, excuse me, that when I first started watching wrestling, it was in mid 1992, and it was basically uh, it was WCW. Kind of at the conclusion of the Dangerous Alliance angle, and again, we cover Dangerous Alliance, at least most of that, on the show, so people listen to the old episodes. We
Because
didn't
you
even do it
came
that long
in,
ago. It's like the last like year or so.
you started watching around like May of '92, right? Like that's kind of like where you started.
A little bit later, like June. It's like you're off by like maybe like a month or
Okay,
so.
because like the War
Um,
Games, like that Great American Bash '92 was like your first like pay per view that you were
yeah,
like aware of.
yeah. And I say that, but I had probably seen at least one or two Saturday Night's main event before, so I kind of was aware of like wrestling, and I'd seen Hulk
Yeah,
Hogan
because
and all
I
that.
like that was with me. Like so, '97 is when I really started watching. Um,
Mhm.
but um, like in '91 and '92, like I didn't watch like WWF, but like I had like their sticker book because I love sticker books. And like if you needed me to name like a large portion of their roster, I could because of like the Hasbro commercials and stuff.
Mhm.
So like I was aware of it. Like I was even aware like Sergeant Slaughter was in the WWF and a bad guy when that was going on. Like even like because cable in the 90s, I saw all the advertisements for their pay-per-views, so like I knew who Lawler was because he was like their he always had a big part on like the pay-per-view commercials. Like I had seen wrestling before. I think I had seen like a couple episodes of Raw in the like the early days. Like I even knew who like Diesel and like Razor Ramon was. Like I was aware when Hogan went to like WCW. When Hogan lost the title to Warrior, that was like a big to do around the playground. So like I it was in my social conscience.
For me, like I fell in love with wrestling with WCW,
Same with me.
and my in my school, like with people I was friends with, they were aware of, and it was more like WWF/WWE. Well, it was WWF then. Like we graduated high school before it became WWE.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I was a couple years into college when they did the changeover.
yeah, because WWE was like it became WWE like either
2002.
late '90s, early 2000s. Like, yeah, like
2002,
yeah, it
2003,
was
I think.
yeah. We had graduated high school, like so. But so was WWF, but it's like they were more WWF, so they were more like Hogan, and then after Hogan left, like whoever was in that, up to a point we graduated, and it's like by the time we graduated, it was like starting in like to the Austin Rock era. But
Yeah.
point is, like I was aware of wrestling, and I loved wrestling. And talked before, like I just devoured everything wrestling I could that I could at the time, like because this is like before the days of streaming, and I was still young. That it's like I think by like the late '90s, it was a thing to do tape trading, probably even before then. But it's like I would not have been in a position to like tape trade. It was
I
like 2000 early 2000s, and it's like I even had access to the internet
I think
really through like college. So it's like I could actually go and be like I even understand like wrestling forums and things like that.
I
But I
think
could tape
summer
trade.
of '98 because I had my own car that summer. I think I I made like the circuit around all the video rental places near me and got all the unique V8, like rented all the unique VHSs over the course of that summer break I had. So that was like how I saw old stuff, and like that was kind of my tape trading. And I always hated that WCW never had like the like the amount of tapes that WWE had, because like
No, they didn't.
because the WWE ones were always fun because you never knew like what you're gonna get. Like you get some like weird like Coliseum one, like Rampage 91, or like Body Slams or something, and you would just get like a random show they taped for it, or like just some comp of matches, and it was always fun. And then I think when I started tape trading is I think I eBayed a couple of tapes off of someone, and then oh, what are they called now? They were like it became Slam Bam Jam was the first place I started buying tapes off of.
Hmm.
But I don't remember what that was, about 2001, I think. I think is when I started getting tapes for Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, WWF was, I mean, they were good about putting out that stuff. And sometimes you get like the Rampage, you get something that it would be like, well, now I would probably appreciate even more, but you would get like a 90-minute tape, and it'd be kind of like some crap. It'd be like, here's the Bushwhackers versus Power and Glory, and it's like, okay, well, more of a comedy match. But then at the end, like the main event of the show would be like, and now here's Macho Man Randy Savage and Bret Hart versus Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, and it's like, what the fuck? And then
Yeah.
it'd be an awesome match, and it's like the only match that these men ever had with one another, and it would be amazing. And you'd be like, whoa, what is this?
Or you get
And it'd
something
just be
weird where
randomly going on.
it'd be like, oh, on this tape, like Bret Hart's defending the Intercontinental title against Skinner, and it'd be like some 12-minute match. Like, oh wow, Skinner can actually kind of work.
Oh yeah, I had no idea. That's a great example because I had no idea who Skinner actually was. I didn't know that it's like this is Steve Kern, and the
Yeah.
gimmick is dumb, but he's actually a good worker, and he'd been around for like 20 years at this point.
Oh yeah, he'd been around forever. Because we watched that. Remember that weird match? It was like Bobby Eaton and Steve Kern or something in
Mm.
WCW.
Was that was part of when he was like Bad Attitude, I
Yeah,
think.
that was it.
Bad Attitude tag team.
It was real weird.
um,
I think because like for me, like
yeah, but
for me with WCW, like it was my first promotion. Like I think Southern wrestling resonates the best with me. So like I think it's why I like Memphis
mm,
so much. And even back then, like WWE was never like it does. WWE has never hit the same with me. Like other than like some brief snippets here and there, like in 2000, and some characters here and there. And I think I finally like decided, and I started calling, like, for me it's kind of like CGI wrestling. And what I mean by that is like if you watch like a lot of CGI stuff versus like practical effects, like the problem you start developing with like CGI is like there's no weight to CGI. And that's kind of how I feel with like the WWE. And like I get why people like it, because like especially if you go back to old stuff, like WWE's way slicker. They don't make like the basic mistakes that WCW makes. Um, their attention to detail is really good. Like honestly, like I think that was probably Vince's like biggest strength as like a booker, is like his internal consistency was really good for a long time. And they don't like, and I
yeah,
said they don't make like the basic mistakes that WCW makes all the time. Their mistakes are much
yeah.
smaller and more forgivable. So like I get why people like WWE, and I get why kids liked it, because it was just
The
slicker and
they've always had very high production values, and like you said, even if it's not like, well, we're a multi-million or billion-dollar company that we have like all this money to throw towards like sets and lighting and all and camera angles. It's just like they just did things, like presented things well. And this is a possibly a weird example, but I'll take a company that has amazing production, at least a presentation of at least their big shows. But if you watch Pro Wrestling Noah, there's so much fucking shit going on with Pro Wrestling Noah that it's not good generally, and the booking's terrible. But if you, and also To a lesser extent, their booking's actually good. But if you watch like the big shows for Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling, I think they're owned by the same company, right? Like Cybersports.
Yeah.
Like the actual production values and presentation of the big shows for both those companies look amazing. So you can watch a Pro Wrestling Noah show and the booking can be garbage and it's insane, but you watch a big show and it's like, damn, that looked, at least visually it looked amazing. Or you watch a Tokyo Joshi Pro like Grand Princess or some one of their big shows, and it's like, well, the wrestling is actually good, but you watch it and it's like, fuck, this is a good show, and it is a good show, but it heightens everything because the production's really well, and they have probably like a small fraction of the money that WWE has now, but
Well, it's really, I think it's,
probably since like WrestleMania 3, they've always had good production and they do things in a way that it's like, you're right, they don't, there's mistakes that's even not like, oh, this is a booking mistake or whatever. It's like they even have it down where it's like, this was a pretty good, until the Kevin Dunn,
yeah.
we need to do 100 jump cuts a minute nonsense. Like generally even like the camera angles of things were well thought
Well,
out and done
I'll,
well.
I'll use a good example, like where you appreciate WWE is like All Out last year. No, yeah, All Out last year from AEW. What, 83,000 people. They did not do a good job of making that show feel big. And then they did the show this year, and you could see all the things they learned about the mistakes they made last year. And it was a much better production. But like that first one, they really didn't like capture how big it felt. And they did a better job the second time because that was one of those things I watched. I'm like, man, like WWE would have like had a field day making this look like the biggest thing ever. And like I said, they kind of learned the second year. Um, but stuff like that. But like I think though what started hurting WWE in like the Dunn era is like you would watch something like New Japan, and while the production wasn't as slick, it would stand out to you because then they would be doing like camera shots, they'd be doing these like below shots of like entrances and stuff, and it'd be stuff that like, because I would say, and it's still kind of a problem with them, but like underdone, the WWE like production kind of stagnated, and then these promotions would do these like weird angles that WWE never did, and it'd be like, oh, that's different, like I kind of like that, like why aren't they doing that? But I also think though, in this day and age, it's really easy to make your product look okay. Like you're not gonna look like WWE, but like there are still some promotions that'll like release some stuff and it's still like a handheld and stuff, and it's like, come on, guys, like you could invest. Like there are some low rent places I've seen that have like a stable camera and it looks like a TV show, like a low budget
Mhm.
TV show, but like they actually like make their thing look good. So like, I think that's a big pet peeve I've run into with indie promotions if their product looks like crap and they're still doing like stuff from like 2002. But yeah, I think that's the why WWE's always had a big advantage though, is their production's just better. Because like if you even if you go watch like even into like the early 90s, like the center stage stuff I think generally looks okay, but like, you know, like pro and worldwide are in these arenas, they're dark and they can look real, they just don't look as good as the WWF stuff that looks.
And WWF/WWE, and people have used this analogy before, so it's not groundbreaking. But it kind of is like you're watching the big budget like Marvel movie. And that can be of varying quality. Like, is it terribly deep? No. Does it look great? Yeah. Is it entertaining? It depends, but sometimes very, very entertaining. Can it also be like good narratively? Not. Yes, it can. Like there are some of those Marvel movies that I would actually say like this is a good movie, like especially like Captain America 2,
Yeah.
my opinion. Like that's just objectively I feel a good movie. But a lot of that stuff, it's like you consume it and it's the equivalent of like empty calories. It's like you watch it and maybe you enjoy it, but it's like, am I gonna care about some of the stuff a year from now? Like,
maybe.
maybe, maybe not.
And I'd say when you
Um,
say like the
some
deep
yes
part,
though.
and I'd say sometimes
Yeah.
even where you said like, is it deep? Like no, but I think even then, like sometimes, and I say this is true as the WWE. Sometimes they do creep up on you and they surprise
Yeah.
you, and they'll sneak a
Mhm.
good little gut punch in there on you that like you weren't expecting. And I think
Yeah. It's not. Yeah. We're kind of generally down in the WWE. I think for many reasons, but
yeah, and I
it's
try to
not without
be
complete value.
well, and I try to be fair. I try to be fair to WWE too. When I'm sure when people watch this and I talk about them being a content mill and stuff, they think I'm just like shitting on them, which I am to a degree. But that's also like when I talk about them being a content mill now, I think that encapsulates my issues with their booking and why their booking is the way that it is because like they are a content mill and like they're when you have to fill so much time of TV a week, like you have to make a lot of concessions because you can't burn your stuff. You can't burn all your like that's when like, and I get annoyed with that. AEW fans are the worst about this. I'm just gonna be honest. Like getting all upset that the AEW doesn't like burn all their matches on like a single show is what I get annoyed with.
Yeah. Look. Yeah. I'm an AEW fan, but and there are people certainly on social media on Twitter who will say, and the other AEW fans will say this. They're like AEW fans are the absolute worst. And I know what they're saying. What they mean by that when they say that is because there is a certain segment of AEW fans who basically it amounts to, oh, this Dynamite didn't appeal to my very specific personal preferences, so it's shit. And it's like, no, it wasn't. Like, but you don't need. It's like, okay, if I was booking this, so I need Kenny Omega versus Takeshita, and then I need the Bucks versus, and it's like, stop. No, like, well, why didn't they do Kenny Omega versus? I remember back in the day, I told you about this,
First
like
Forbidden
Forbidden
Door,
Door.
yeah.
What it's like this is when Kenny Omega was still out, not his diverticulitis, but
When
he was
he
still
when he got
out.
his vertigo fixed, and he had his
Vertigo, and he
shoulder.
had like shoulders and
Yeah,
knees, and he had he literally had like 10 things he fixed.
I know.
So it's like, I had all this shit done. I need to be out like 10 months. Okay, bear
Yeah,
with me. And there was no timetable on him coming back, and they were going to do Forbidden Door, and there were people literally grumbling online like 30 days out, where it's like, oh, like why aren't they like they have to be doing Kenny Omega versus Okada. Like, why haven't they announced that yet? Like, it's bullshit if they don't. And it's like, Kenny Omega is still out. There's not even a hint. Not even the dirt sheets are like he's coming back any moment now. It's like
no.
there's no timetable. Nothing. Not even a rumor, oh, he's ready. Nothing.
And he'd only
Silence. And then
been
people in their heads was like, oh, I need that match to happen. So they need to announce it. If they don't, it's bullshit. And it's like,
and he hadn't been out that
what
long either.
why are you so entitled?
He'd only been out like 6 or 7 months when that started too. But what I hate about it,
Yeah, and it's like, why are you so entitled?
but what I hate about it
And that's
though,
everything. It's like, oh, why
yeah,
why aren't we seeing Osprey versus Okada on Dynamite? It's like, why would you have that match for no reason?
yeah, and
Like, come on.
what I hate about that though is when they do that, and it's like they start bitching the second like not every one when not every single thing on the screen appeals to them, and I hate it because it's like there are products and time frames of wrestling where I absolutely love that promotion, but I cannot tell you one promotion ever where I've loved everything that's been on my screen from start to finish of a show, week to week. Like there's always something where it's like I'm less interested or oh that's kind of bad, but like and that's kind of it's not like a specifically WWF thing, but like when we review like old WWF pay-per-views, it's a mentality I go in with is like, okay, there's going to be stuff on this show I'm going to hate. So my mathematics of if I'm going to like this show is the good stuff going to outnumber and be better than like the bad? And I mean, but that's true of anything. Like you know, New Japan when I absolutely loved it. Like there were things like I didn't dig, and like I don't want to call him out specifically because he just got cancer, but like El Desperado, like he's never been like in his group has never been like a group I've cared for. That's always been like filler on cards for me. Um,
Mm.
like Killer Elite Squad. I like the idea of like Davy Boy and Lance. Like and that's one of my favorite gimmicks. So if you haven't watched like Lance Archer in New Japan, what he would do is he'd come out and he'd be spitting water on the crowd, and then his water bottle would run out, and he'd chuck it, and then he'd open his coat, and then he'd just have a line of water bottles around there. So he'd grab another water bottle and start spitting it all over people, and it cracked me up. But like their matches, I didn't like their matches, but it's like okay, like it's just something like okay, well I'll go get a sandwich, or oh that'll let my brain reset to get to the next match. But
I
like
thought I thought their matches were fine. I guess as much with everything, like it would depend upon the opponent.
yeah, it was more. I love the gimmick. The matches were, I could take or leave them. But like that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying though is like the people that get mad like, well, not everything on the show cater to me. Like, well, not everything's ever gonna cater to you because like there's different fans with different tastes.
nor
And
should it. Nor should it. Like, there are people. It's like you need to have a level of maturity, and maybe it's because like I don't know. Is it because we're older? Like you need to have a level of maturity that even if you get frustrated, because it's easy to be frustrated as a wrestling fan, or even a wrestling fan of a particular company, to be like, the particular guy or guys that I like, I wish they'd be doing more with. It's like in a company of any substantial size, that's going to happen. It's like you have favorites. Like for example, I love Darby Allin. I think that they have the potential that they're baby building Darby Allin to win the title off John Moxley, or at least elevate him to the next level that he could be in the main event scene. And if that doesn't happen, will I be disappointed? Like, yeah. Will I be like, it's bullshit? And it's like, no. But I think that, yeah, it's like if they didn't happen, I'd be frustrated because it's like it's a great opportunity, but it's also what I want to happen. So if it doesn't cater to my interest, it's like maybe they've lost an opportunity, but it's also like it's not all about me. So
yeah,
maybe they do something different. Like, what if I'm like, I want a Darby, and then they don't do that, but then it's like someone else who's great. It's like, oh, actually, what they're gonna do is they're elevating Daniel Garcia now. Daniel Garcia, and it's like, maybe I'd prefer Darby, but Daniel Garcia I like too. So it's like nothing is ever going to 100% cater to you, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You kind of have to like appreciate it. Sometimes they do screw up. I mean, that's the other thing.
yeah.
Like sometimes it's like yeah, I wanted this to cater to me because I think this makes sense, and they did a dumb thing by not catering to this because it doesn't have to be about my specific wants, but I think this overall was good. It's like, of course,
It's,
sometimes that is the case, but
and sometimes
you
something,
have to have maturity. It's like it's not all about you. You're not a baby. I want the bottle. Like give me the
yeah.
bottle. It's like, come on.
And sometimes things
You can't
grow
be
on
that.
you. Like when we did that one Memphis
Yeah.
show and there was all that Jimmy Valiant and we were going in and I was like, oh man, like Matt's not. And you were kind of like, okay, like I'm
Can't
gonna
stand
deal.
Jimmy Valiant
Yeah.
generally.
And you were kind of like, okay, well I'm gonna tolerate this. And we came into it and you're like I like Memphis Jimmy Valiant because he's just kind of a loud asshole.
Yeah. It's like how like generally speaking, Jim Crockett Promotions, Jimmy Valiant. Oh, I can't stand this guy. What made me turn on Jimmy Valiant? It's like, oh, just have him basically be like a heel and an asshole. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like, oh, this works. Like he's just going there. It's like I'm bitter I didn't win this match. So like, oh, you want a TV? I'm gonna like fucking throw the TV on the ground and destroy it. Fuck you. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay.
I
All right, Jimmy.
what
He's not the smiling, like dancing babyface Jimmy Valiant that's having a nonsense bullshit match with Pez Watley
and
in a 800-year feud with Paul Jones'
and
army.
and Pez
Come on.
Watley was right to be mad at him for that comment. I will go to. We need to do that
Yeah.
angle sometime, and I need to break down why Pez Watley's right. But the other thing though is I love when Coco's wrestling that match and Jimmy Valiant comes out for no other reason than to like just trash the TV. But the angle where he comes out and like just goes at Tommy Rich's mom, like was so good.
Yeah. Oh, and I told you, like, well, I guess it became enlightened that Tommy Rich was supposed to be like a heel. It's kind of like a heel face turn, but he was a heel because it's like his mother came out and it's like, oh, Tommy Rich is just really upset that y'all don't like him, and it's like this is a face. Like the mom is being like, don't be mean to my boy. I'm like, you're really like cutting this guy's balls off by having his mom defend him.
Well, he's
And
a
it's
heel
like, oh, if he's
though.
a heel,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Oh, if he's a heel, it's like, yeah, it makes him a bigger heel because it's like, look at this
But but
like
that's
pussy ass.
but that's what I
His
miss about.
mom's out there defending him.
But that's what I miss about old like Southern wrestling though, is because then Tommy Rich comes out in like a white shirt, like, oh yeah, there's gonna be some blood because he's got the I'm about to bleed like a stuck pig shirt on.
Yeah, but that's a great thing about Southern wrestling, and you really have to. My family's from the South. People you don't know, like I was born and raised in Washington D.C., so I'm like a Yankee sort of. But my family is from the South, like from Georgia. So you really, I appreciate Southern wrestling. You have to really you have to appreciate Southern style wrestling too, because it's like they'll do shit like back in the day, Terry Funk. It's like Dusty Rose is an egg sucking dog, and it's like that in the South, you'd be like, oh my God, he called him an egg sucking dog. That's fighting words. So like, we're going to throw hands about that. Whereas most people in America are probably be like, what the hell kind of insult is that? Like, what does that even mean? But fighting words.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's like come out Southern style, like Southern wrestling. It's like the face comes out, he's got a white shirt on. It's like, oh no, 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 don't do that. It's like, you know what's happening.
yeah,
You know, that shirt's going to just get his life's blood is just going to be poured all over that
yeah,
shirt. Those dastardly heels are going to do something bad to him.
yeah. So we're
And,
gonna
well,
hit our.
go,
I was gonna say we're gonna hit our main event
well,
here in a second, but what were you
well,
gonna say?
well, let me finish the thought to kind of bring it back into WCW. I guess final thought, because we kind of went into a wild tangent, but WCW to me was kind of in the same vein as like Southern style wrestling, which I loved, and you kind of were hinting at that too. But it did kind of, to me, it blurs more of the lines of like it kind of suspends that disbelief, and part of that was probably because like it did have the less like production
It
values.
was I call
It
it
was more gritty
gritty.
at
Yeah,
times.
because it
Yeah,
was like
and so that makes it more realistic.
yeah, because they're in these like small buildings. They're a little dirty. Like you can tell some of them are air conditioned, which never run TV in non-air conditioned buildings because it looks bad.
Oh,
Because that's one of those
I
things.
went to an indie show.
That
I went to an indie show that the air conditioning in like July like broke down, and it's like, oh, don't do this. Is not
no, I did
good.
that. I
It
did
was
that.
it was it was smelly and not pleasant at all.
I went to a Ring of Honor one, and they did it at the fairgrounds here, and the building wasn't air conditioned. It was the worst night of my life because it was so fucking hot. Because it was in July and it was like 95 degrees out. And like, when
Mm.
you're just sitting in your own like sweat after a while, and it's just like, yeah, it's not good. But what was I gonna say? Oh, that's one of the reasons I love World Class. Is just the Sportatorium is a dump, but it has so much character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I miss about the slick new
Ah,
buildings. I miss like those old like crap buildings with their like quirks and personalities, or they're obviously in a gym and you can see like the basketball hoop like moved up to the ceiling and stuff. But this is going to be our main event of the evening. So this is from 2003. This is Freddy versus Jason, um,
mm,
which spoiler is a shockingly, like perplexingly pretty good movie. Like considering the franchise that
so
they're
I
born
didn't.
out of. I'm not saying it's like an all-time classic, but like if you were to say like where would this rank like in the Nightmare movies for you, I'd be like it's the third best one. Um
I'd
it,
have to. I'd have to watch. I'd have to watch them because I think chronologically this would have been like the eighth
yes, this came after
Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
This would have come after New Nightmare.
Because I think they did six of them,
And then New
and then the
Nightmare.
seventh one was New Nightmare. Yeah,
Then
and
the
then eight
2010.
was this one.
Yeah, and then the 2010
Uh,
reboot with
I
that.
I don't. I almost don't count the remake. Have you seen the remake?
I don't know because if it's not Robert Englund, you can't do Freddy without Robert Englund. Like I'm sorry, you just can't.
Uh, the remake was shit on. I didn't think it was terrible, but obviously it's like a 2010 movie, and they never did anything more with it, so it was not well
Didn't they
received.
try to
But
like serious
it
him up too? Like they got rid of like the
they serious him up. Yeah, there was a scene where they tried to. I think if I recall, because it's been like over a decade since I saw this, but they kind of almost they tried to for a heartbeat. They tried to do ambiguity. It's like, well, was Freddy really like? They did portray him as like he's like again the kind of like the dream demon where he's killing people, but they kind of for a heartbeat did a thing where it's like, well, was he real? Is he just getting revenge on people because he was wrongfully like accused of being a child molester and then murdered, or was he really like this evil child molester murderer and he got his comeuppance, but he's still like now because as an evil entity like killing people. For Heartbeat, they played with that, and then there was a scene in the movie where they actually find like evidence that he was actually a child molester murderer, and then it's I think it's supposed to add gravity to it where it's like, oh no, like he's just evil, and they did serious him up,
Yeah.
but it didn't really like play well. But at the same time, we've talked about this on the show before, or at least internally, like with us, like they flanderized him, where it by at least
It just turned into
I like Dream Warriors, the third Nightmare. I
yeah.
like Dream Warriors, but they by then for sure, certainly by like the fourth movie, they're basically comedies because it's
Yeah,
all about
'cause
like how funny
yeah.
how funny can Freddy be when he's killing people in interesting ways.
I actually thought cuz this movie so we'll get a little more into it, but where I think so I saw this in theaters when it originally came out. So I'm going to give my history of
Mm.
this. I expected this to be terrible cuz the movies for both had been terrible for a while. And I always say that with this movie. I went in with super low expectations, and I think like I got an above average movie out of it. And when you're going in expecting like unwatchable garbage, and you get something that's like a little above the heap, it's like, oh well, that was actually really good. Because where I'm gonna talk about this movie is like, so what I like about it is, um, the way they get them to fight makes sense. The characters are a little eh. I think the final girl in this movie is like a weak final girl. Um, but like the continuity, like Jason is in hell from the last movie he was in, canonically, because I
Oh
think
yeah,
Jason in Space came out before this, but that's way in the future.
it came after this.
Yeah.
Actually, came after this. I feel like this movie is kind of like maybe outside. Well, it depends on how like if you want to. I mean, Jason 10 or Jason X. I guess by the numbering, you're supposed to consider it's like in continuity, but it's like, is it? Like, I don't know. Like,
And I feel
it's
like
kind of weird.
this smartly takes the parts of Nightmare that works, like, and then they bring some elements back, like especially from Dream Warriors. They realize Dream Warriors is the best thing that was about this. They bring back like the Hypnosil and stuff like that. But they also get Freddy generally right in this because he straddles the line of being funny and doing his like bitch catchphrase and stuff, but they keep like the terror in there.
They played down the comedy, or like he's just a jokey like one-liner guy, and it's
Well,
like
there he has a
that's
he has a very
they
racially
clawed back to flanderizing.
yeah, but there was
Go ahead.
he had a very racially inappropriate line that I thought was hilarious. Well, I don't think he was
What
being
was that? I missed that.
when the one girl comes, it's like, ooh, dark meat.
Oh. Oh,
The end
okay.
part where she starts shit talking him.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't really being,
Um,
but like it was. But then there was there was the thing with the bong was pretty funny too.
so the premise of this, the near I could tell, and I actually don't. So I didn't like this film as much as you did. And part of that I feel is I forget what other movie it was. Maybe it was like Joyride that we reviewed.
Yeah.
But to me, this is a 2003 film, and
Oh,
I mean,
it is down
I
to the
lived this
music.
era.
Like especially what like
Ah,
the intro music is like, oh yeah, this is pure 2003 written all over it.
it's I feel like and I lived through this period, like, but the early aughts for sure, maybe like when it got later in the aughts, like, but the early aughts like had like a style and a cultural like presentation and feel that I just don't feel like lives up. Like, because we just
No,
reviewed The Crow,
because there's no
which is mid. mid 90s, but it's like, and I feel I honestly I agree, like what I said a couple episodes ago, where it's like this is very of the moment. It's very 90s,
because there's no
so
cell
it's
phones.
dated in that.
There's no cell
Yeah,
phones,
it's well, it's dated in that way. It feels like in the 90s, but it also like works and is a good movie still. But this, it's like it just feels like so. To me, it's like it's some of the shit is like corny, just corny,
I mean, it's
like an
supposed to be.
odd, like the yeah. Um, but I think the premise is basically like Jason, and I don't recall the end of Jason 9. Jason Goes to Hell, but Jason is just like in I guess the forest of
No, he's in hell, I
uh
think. Well, so let's
well, his
talk about
body is his body's in the forest,
yeah.
like just rotting there in the forest.
So let's talk about kind of I guess what the plot is. So the idea is so
Yeah,
the way they dealt with Freddy is they pretty much memory hold him. Like that's how they dealt with Freddy.
but
They didn't talk to the kids about him.
to
So
bizarre links, like this, like what's I forget the
the sheriff,
city that he originated from. Um, but basically the city, it's like they obviously killed him, but they to some level they understood he was like some sort of entity that if remembering him would bring him back and he would kill people in their dreams. So anybody who started dreaming of Freddy, they basically took them, kidnapped them. Well, maybe not, but they basically committed them to a mental asylum and gave them drugs so they would not dream of Freddy and made it seem like they were crazy and just institutionalized them.
well, no,
And so,
they were using a drug that was from Dream Warriors, I think. It would prevent them from dreaming, so Freddy
oh, I
couldn't
don't
get to
remember.
them. Because so the idea is the town memory holds him because when you take the fear from him away, it takes his power away. So they did something really bizarre, but it worked. So then the idea that here is so he figures out Jason exists from some from something or other, and so he pretty much pretends to be Jason's mom. And his idea here is, well, I'm going to have Jason, I'm going to set Jason loose and kill people in the original house because that'll get people to remember me and then I can come back. And so then the idea is, so he does that and it's successful, but then Jason is Jason and, gets a little unruly. Um,
Yeah, well, yeah, like Jason, sorry, Freddy realizes like he can resurrect Jason. And the premise is that Jason is will kill people and that people will attribute it to Freddy, but I don't
yeah.
feel like that was a idea that was really fleshed out well.
Well,
And I get it's a horror movie.
they
It's
kind of,
but I
they kind of, so they so they give you some they take some faith in their audience so they don't exposition it to death because you figure out after the fact that they're in the original house because the cops start talking about it and then it makes
yeah.
sense like after the fact.
But I guess the thing is like Jason is set upon the city to start killing people, but then it's like he just randomly appears. He's not like it's not well, for example, like the Halloween movies that they did recently, the latest trilogy, which the first one was awesome, and the second two that they did basically during like the pandemic were garbage. But Michael Myers like would come, he like would obviously go on a rampage in Halloween, but he would just go like basically house to house and just like murdering the fuck out of everyone. So it's like by the end of any movie, any of those three movies of the most recent trilogy, it's like he's got a body count of like 100 people. Like he just would go just kill like everyone. Where Jason is like, oh, like Freddy's setting up Jason to go out and kill people, and they would attribute it to him, so people would remember Freddy and be afraid of Freddy, which would gain Freddy like strength, and he could then be able to kill people in their dreams again. And then it's like he would just show up like every so often. And it's like you show up, kill someone, and it's like 30 minutes later, like, oh, let me show up again and kill someone. And it's like, what? Like it was to
Yeah.
me, it was like, kind of odd. But the first kill was fun because it's like some sort of like we're having a party at like a house or a sorority house or
Well,
something
they
like
were. Well,
that.
let's be honest.
And
They were. So, I would kill Mo probably marry Curly and fuck Larry. I don't know. What was your opinion on there? I mean, I think Moe's got to die in
Yeah.
that
Oh,
setup.
the first victim was a total douche, and Jason like stabs him with like through the mattress with like a
Yeah.
machete. And the guy's like face down on the mattress, and he's like stabbed through like the chest with a machete. So it's like, oh, that's he's gonna die. And it's like, oh no, actually, that's not how he's
Yeah.
gonna die.
Folds the
Jason
bed up.
basically takes the mattress and like what like folds it like he's full. Like I'm done reading this book. Like closes it, and the guy just like spine
And
bends
then,
backward in
and
the way
then
it's
the fucking police
not
are
supposed to
like,
bend. And he's like,
oh, this is a suicide. Like, bitch, please.
yes, yeah. It's like, well, obviously they're trying to in universe in the context of the story that it's like, oh, like we can't say this. It's like somebody like Freddy, whatever. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
suicide, and it's like,
And
really? I don't know
what?
if no one who's committed suicide by bending their spine back. It's the wrong way. The
Yeah.
best part, he died. He was drinking like basically the 2003 equivalent of like a Monster energy drink, and it's like this is total douche guy. He
Yeah.
even dies like a fucking asshole.
Yeah. And then so then the cops are acting weird. Then his friend totally gets killed on the front porch with his dad, which is hilarious. His dad was being an asshole,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah.
But my favorite part, so the big Jason kill scene is in this cornfield at this like kind of rave. And
So so at
hey
least a
Matt,
couple people have
I have to.
died.
Hey Matt, go and talk. I've got to walk away for a second. Sorry.
Okay,
And then
so yeah, Brad's gonna miss this part, but when he comes back, like I'll get into this. So essentially, like yeah, in the context of this, they're at like a party or something, and then one of the girls in this like teenage friend group, like has sex with the douche who dies first. Okay, and like she goes to take a shower after they have sex, and then meanwhile Jason comes in and like kills the dude horrifically, and then somehow then just leaves, and everyone else. Well, actually, they flee from him, whatever, so they escape. But anyway, he dies, and then another person, kind of in the friend group, gets killed on his front porch with his dad. So now we have at least 3 people dead, and it's known people know that these people have died. And so the friend group, who are like the heroes of the story, the teenage friend group, they're all lamenting. It's like, oh no, like, oh, these people we know have died. So then of course, like, what do you do? What do you do when this happens? Do you like go home and are sorry about it or whatever? Or do you go out to the middle of a fucking cornfield and be like, let's go to a rave and do drugs and alcohol and shit? Guess what? Guess what happens? Only in horror movies, it's like, yeah, the rave, that's the correct, like, logical choice to do. And it's like, look, I made dumb decisions as a teenager, but not like, oh, let me go to a rave when a couple of my friends have just been murdered horrifically by what amounts to a serial killer, because this is completely bullshit. Anyway, so they go to a rave in the middle of a cornfield, and well, when Brad gets back, I'll explain we'll get into like the rave and the murders at Jason, because Jason shows up and just starts killing people. Brad's back. So I was talking about the point where Brad, my summation was basically like, I think it was dumb that this teenage friend group, a couple people have been murdered horrifically, and instead of being distraught and like ruminating on that and everything, they're like, you know what we really need? Let's go to a rave in a cornfield.
yeah.
And it's like, that's a bad decision.
So
But
fun fact.
the final girl, hold on, the final girl and her friend, Destiny's Child Kelly Rowland, who is probably the only minority in this movie. And I was also annoyed because she's an annoying character, and it's like, you really like early 2003 did the whole like African American friend, but kind of did it over the top. And it's like, you're doing too much. Like, this is not, you don't need to be like sassy.
The problem I
Like,
had
why the
though
level of
is
sass to this character?
I liked. So I liked her and the nerd guy's like relationship arc better than I liked Final Girl and Will. Like I thought
Oh yeah,
I
they're practically boring, but Kelly
because
Rowland and the nerd guy. Yeah.
they had and Kelly Rowland and the nerd guy had good chemistry together, whereas Final Girl and Will
Hmm.
guy didn't. And I like, and
Yeah.
we got kind of the end, and I was just like, man, I really wish Kelly and the nerd guy had been like the final two, because I was more interested in their dynamic.
It would have been a subversion.
They were just better,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I think she was a
uh,
better actress than the final girl too, in general.
yeah.
But so the
Final
funny,
final guy was, I think, Jason Ritter. Like,
yeah, and
yes, that John Ritter, like his son.
the one sheriff guy was from Scary Movie and some other stuff. He's a familiar
He
face,
the
but he's
one sheriff, I think he was like a deputy actually.
yeah,
Well, no, wait. The sheriff was he's done like voice work. He was on, I think, Stargate. The older guy.
yeah.
I think he did a voice work as like Optimus Prime in one of these like Beast Wars,
Uh,
I think, maybe.
no, I was talking.
But the younger, the
Yeah,
deputy guy, who I think you're talking about, he was actually on the show Riverdale. He was like
yeah.
uh, Betty's dad on Riverdale. He was Betty's dad, but also was secretly a serial killer. And it's like,
Yeah.
people who've never seen the Riverdale series, it is the most ridiculous show that goes far and beyond
I felt
Archie
old because Luke
comics
Perry was
that
the
you could
dad in it.
possibly imagine.
So
Oh,
it is funny.
it's
So
ridiculous. But anyway,
with the rave, I watched the EFAP on this as part of my prep, just as an extra fun thing. But so they get to the rave, they're the douche that gets killed trying to like get a little handsy with a sleeping girl before they both
mhm.
get killed. So on EFAP they referred to him uniformly and the entire time as corn rapist, which I thought was hilarious because I was like, yeah, that's apt. But so
They're having a rave.
yeah,
They're yeah, they're having a rave, as one does when one's friends die. Um, and Jason just shows up and then just starts
well, he gets set on
murdering
fire.
people.
He gets set on fire, which I thought that was a
Oh,
cool visual, is him like going through the corn and the corn's like catching on fire. And I think it was the best
before that, there's two dudes and he's like, they're like just like acting like he's some sort of like fucking
hillbilly
mutilated hillbilly,
or
and they're
swamp
mocking him,
person.
whatever. And he literally just like takes one guy's head and goes like this, like, and
Yeah.
like twists it, and his fat friend is like, oh, and starts running away.
Which
And of course, they like set Jason afire. And it did have a really awesome visual where Jason, basically the ultimate revenant zombie, is just engulfed in flames, walking through the corn, completely unfazed of being burned,
and I thought that
setting the
yeah.
cornfield aflame, and he's just like moseying along, like
And
like with his machete and burning to death. Like, well, not to death, but I mean, he's
and I
burning.
thought it was I thought
And
that
it's terrifying in
yeah.
context.
And I thought I think that was the coolest death is then when Fatty comes running out of the woods and he's like yelling and just a flaming machete right through the chest. Like, and if it would have been like a
You
3D
just see
movie,
him
it would have,
running, and then all of a sudden, this blade just like,
yeah. And then he just starts killing people left and right. They take off
oh yeah.
and escape,
Well, and
which I hate.
and this was the point. Oh, go ahead. Go, sorry.
What the part I hate though is, so we pretty much get like some guy doing his like best like Jason Mewes like J impression.
Hmm.
So he's the worst addition to this. So they take off. She goes back. They figure out like some stuff with her mom that Freddy killed her mom or whatever. So then
Yeah.
she takes off and is like the first person ever in a slasher movie that's figured out how to use a window to escape a situation.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. About this time, though, in the context of the story, this is where Freddy realizes, oh, I can't control this.
well, he gets
I can't
pissed
control
off.
Jason.
He gets pissed off because
Yeah.
he's about to kill the sleeping girl, and Jason kills her,
Mhm.
and that's when he gets pissed
Yeah.
off.
He gets pissed off. It's like, oh, he stole my kill, and then he realizes, like, oh, actually, I cannot control this guy, like Jason at all.
Yeah,
Like, he can't, because he had previously controlled him by basically making Jason dream or imagine that he was Jason's mother. And
yeah.
it's like, oh, you need to kill people, Jason. Like, you need to get revenge. but that stops. Like Jason obviously is now like he's out there killing people, and he's not stopped. Freddy has no control over him.
Yeah. So they pretty much the other cop figures out the Jason Voorhees things and thinks he's like a copycat killer. And so, the he pretty
Yes.
much goes out and he finds these people. And this is where I think the movie's strengths are, though, is because it pays attention to details, and like they aren't necessarily great explanations, but they're like, "Well, how'd you find us?" And he's like, "Well, the Scooby Doo van out back was a dead giveaway." Like little things like that where they take a moment to like tell you. So then they get this idea. They figure out that they need this hypnosil so they won't dream to protect themselves. So they go back to the institute. Um, and this is kind of where shit hits the fan. So they go back there, and Jason kills kills one of them because he shows up. No, he kills the guard. The guard got squished like a pizza. That was a pretty good death, even though you didn't see it. Where he knocks down the door on the security guard.
Mm.
And then Weed Guy gets killed by no, sorry. Weed Guy does not get killed by Freddy. So Freddy kind of possesses, we'll call him J Junior, JJ, because he's Weed Guy. So Freddy possesses him and dumps all the hypnosil. And then he comes up with this great idea, which I didn't understand what he was doing at first. This is where I think like the movie pays off if you pay attention. So he gets this like super concentrated sleeping drug, and uses it to put Jason to sleep to get Jason into the dream world. And so this is where
which is an interesting visual, because Freddy possesses this guy, and then jams this like drug into Jason's body.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously it's a plot point, but it's like you literally just saw him a little while ago get completely engulfed in flames and just like no sell it. Like he's walking, he's on fire. But this undead zombie,
I'm pretty sure,
like getting sleeping agents, he's like, oh, okay. Like, he
I'm
just
pretty
like
sure.
falls
I'm pretty sure.
sleep.
I'm pretty sure they put enough in there that could have taken out like multiple elephants.
Oh yeah.
So they start their fight, and now the fights between them are really good in this. So there's essentially
yes, yeah.
So there's essentially two fights in this. So there's the dream world fight, and then there's a real world fight. And Freddy looks really good in this. I like his makeup, by the way. They did a pretty good job with it.
It is good. The first fight, which is Freddy versus Jason in the dream world, like Freddy does well because obviously this is the dream world. But the thing that I actually thought was funny and interesting is like he's winning against Jason in the dream world, and that he's just like constantly throwing things at
because he
Freddy.
was drowning him.
Sorry, at Jason. Yeah, well, but the thing is, like, until then, it's like Jason just kind of no sells. He like will get horribly, like, Freddy's like, like, I'm gonna throw like basically like 1,000-pound weight on it. It becomes almost like a Looney Tunes cartoon. Where it's like, let me drop 1,000-ton weight onto you like Wile E. Coyote, and then Jason will just like pop up again because it's like he's an undead revenant. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't fucking matter. Kill him like 100 times. Kill him 100 times in the dream world. It's like he's just gonna keep popping up. Like he's not gonna die because he doesn't die in the real world.
Yeah.
So Freddy basically like this, like what the fuck? But then something happens in like because they're in essentially like almost like the equivalent of like a boiler room in a basement.
Yeah, it's where he died essentially.
Yeah, but like a water pipe breaks and there's like water coming down, and in probably the worst like narrative thing, it's like water's coming down and it's like, oh, Jason starts freaking out, or like
no, he just stops.
Scared.
He won't. No, it works.
He just stops.
He stops. He won't, because like so. The way it is like water's kind of like coming down and like a little fall between the two of them, and Jason won't like cross the barrier.
Yeah. And it's supposed to almost be like, oh, he's afraid because, you know, in the context of things, like Jason originally died because he drowned to death.
Yeah, because camp counselors were too busy getting laid too.
Yeah. But in the context of the film, it's like the finale literally has them at the fucking lake, and Jason gets submerged in the water, which you see at the very end he comes out of. So it's like he's in the dream world, he's afraid of like the water because it reminds him of being submerged and dying in Grand Crystal Lake. When later in the film, he has no problem going in the lake and coming out. And in the films we've seen, he's been in the fucking water and has come out.
and attacked
I don't know.
people
It was
before. But
yeah, it was a plot device.
you
I
had
don't feel
to
like it was pretty strong, but
you had
again,
to
advanced the plot in some
you had
way.
to give him you had to give Freddy something to like do
Yeah,
his thing for a bit. Like they could have done worse, I think. I think they could have done more with the mom angle versus the water, but I don't know how you necessarily pull that off either.
they kind of just dropped the bomb angle
Well, he saw through it.
because
That's
eventually Freddy's like, yeah,
because like when they did it the second time, Jason's kind of like, "You're not my mom," and then he just kind of dropped it. But I think
mm,
that's kind of like he saw through
yeah,
it like the second time. So pretty much, final girl gets. So they get this idea. They're gonna take them to Crystal Lake and get them to fight. Um,
mm.
because either way, like they're hoping Jason will win, and then he'll just go away, and that's kind of their hope. So she goes in and
That
kind of.
hold on. Well, I pause you. That's actually not the worst concept because it has actually been established that Jason, while basically almost being unstoppable, kind of will leave you alone if you're not in like the Camp Crystal Lake area.
He just wants
Like
those
he's
damn
not going to be
kids off
like,
his lawn.
yeah, I mean, outside of films like Jason Takes Manhattan, like Friday the 13th 8, um, if you're like, I'm gonna go for vacation in like Paris, France. Like Jason's not gonna like fucking travel to Paris, France to kill you. He's just like he's hanging out in Camp Crystal
I
Lake.
mean,
Like you're safe.
I'm sure if you don't, I'm sure you might be okay if you go to Crystal Lake and don't have sex with someone. You might be okay. That also seems to irk him more
Yeah.
than anything.
So yeah, like so it's not the worst idea to be like, let's just take him back there and then he'll kill Freddy and then we'll like just mosey on down the road.
Yeah.
He could just be like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna hang out where I live here.
Yeah, like we're cool.
But so the final girl gets into like a dream state and fights Freddy with the idea, and she does, of pulling him into the real world. And she does. And I actually like
so what happens is like this house there and catches on fire, and the guy figures out like to wake her up, he kind of puts her hand in the fire, so she pulls him in. And now what I think is probably the best scene of the movie is Freddy's reaction when he realizes he's in the real world, like the confusion and the almost kind of like, oh shit, like look on his face is really good.
That I actually really appreciated. I didn't necessarily care for this movie that much for like 2/3 of the movie, but that was cool because when he's in the dream world, he's fighting the girl. He even has like, obviously it's makeup effects, but his eyes are even like demonic. Like there's like demonic contacts where it's like they're clearly like demonic looking eyes. And then when he gets pulled into the real world, he becomes almost essentially more human-like. Like his eyes become like normal Robert Englund eyes, with obviously the makeup, the burn makeup. And he does show it's like, oh shit, I'm in the real world. Like he's kind of like a flesh and blood entity again.
Yeah, Jason immediately like takes him and just kind of like smashes him through all the windows in the building.
So when Freddy comes into the real world, and then it's Jason versus Freddy, then I felt this movie became awesome because like it was like it wasn't, first off, Jason starts curb stomping Freddy, but then it becomes like a 20-minute, like it's a pro wrestling fucking match.
Yeah.
And it's awesome, like because they just start beating the shit out of each other. Jason gets the upper hand because he's your monster heel in more ways than one. Oh, that makes sense. A monster heel. He's like a face kind. He's kind of the face in this.
He's
beating the shit out of Freddy.
Jason's kind of unofficially the good guy, I'd say, in the end. And what I think is great about
Yeah.
this is, like, it gives you kind of everything you would want from the two of them fighting. Like, it gives you, like, everything you want.
Mhm.
It's well thought out. They kill Nerd Guy because he kind of gets stabbed and bleeds out, and tells again, the Nerd Guy and Kelly
Well,
should have been the final two left. They had much better character arc. I thought they had much better
yeah,
chemistry.
he he kind of tries. He's kind of like protecting Kelly, and he gets thrown, and then he gets thrown against like the wall of like a cabin, and when he does, he like hits basically like it's even just like a railing or something, but it like basically impales him, and
Yeah,
he comes out of it, but he bleeds to death, and like Kelly Rowland dies not that long afterwards, where
yeah,
she's like starts jaw jacking.
because she does it to save her friend, and
And
Freddy's like, look behind you, and Jason just like kills the shit out of her, which is hilarious.
he
But
like swats her with a machete, yeah, but does it in a way that it's like she literally flies back like 20 feet and then smashes into like a tree. So it's like
yeah,
either the blunt force trauma of being like hacked with machete, or the blunt force trauma of like going like 40 miles an hour into a tree trunk. She's dead. She's dead.
yeah. And now
Um,
Final Destination ripped off part of this battle for I think the fifth movie. Like, yeah, it is the fifth Final Destination rips off part of this movie because there's a point where Freddy essentially impales Jason on a bunch of rebar, and so they,
oh yeah, they're almost like at a construction site,
yeah,
but Freddy like gets on top of the construction site and is like does something that causes all this rebar to basically like cascade down onto Jason and like impales him in different spots. Freddy even gets like this on a chain,
yeah.
like a cement mixer, and it's just like swinging and like pendulum, like wrecking ball, like hitting Jason,
But there,
and it's pretty cool because I
and
got
there's a great part in this though, which is again the attention to detail that this movie has that I think is like something that's surprising with it. So I don't remember what exactly he was doing, but Freddy's trying to move this cart and it gets stuck because he's not in the dream world anymore. He's like, God damn it. And it's such a great, it's like, it's a little tiny thing, but it's like the fact that like he's in the real world and something goes wrong, which it wouldn't happen if he was in the
mm,
dream world, and his just like complete disgust at like the cart getting stuck is like the great little,
his frustration.
yeah,
Yeah,
the little tidbits that this movie does like right.
yeah, because it's a very for someone who's basically like a dream demon at this point. It's just a very ordinary human level of frustration. It's like how many times have you just in general it's like it's something a small inconvenience. It's like you pour yourself like a glass of milk and then you're like going to go to the next room, but you forgot you left your milk on the kitchen counter, and now you got to walk like
Yeah.
10 feet back over the. It's like, oh god damn it, I forgot. And it's like it's a minor inconvenience, but it's very human. Where it's like, ah, oh, great, like the fucking cart won't work now. It's like, yeah, you're not in the dream world anymore. You don't have mastery over the real world. I liked the fight a lot. The fight was fun. Like it kept going. I was like concerned because I was like, oh, it's gonna be like a 2-minute fight, but it's like no, it's like a 20-minute fight, and it's like they kept like
Like,
going to different areas, escalating and things like that. And Freddy, I thought that they did it. This is almost we're wrestling fans here. This is almost like a well booked where Freddy is the trope of the fragile speedster, where he's more agile, he's faster than Jason. So he's doing shit to Jason that's scoring damage. But at the end of the day, Jason is just like a big, impervious, super strong zombie. So he'll pull shit that eventually like it takes out Freddy, but there's a lot of like play and interchange before then where Freddy gets some advantages and then Jason will like, like let me swat you down, and then you build up to it again.
yeah, you get like
Um
the. I thought they were. So with this fight, I thought they were very thoughtful with how they like ended it, because again, you have to go into this like, going in like you can't have a definitive winner because you'll piss people off.
Yeah.
So they kind of do what I thought was smart. So they kind of Freddy essentially kills Jason with his machete, and then Jason kills him with like because he gets his like claw hit arm severed.
Mhm.
So then Jason kind of impales him on that, and then they kind of fall into the water. And then the end is kind of funny because and it's actually the last time Robert Englund was Freddy. So it's Jason walking out of the water with Freddy's like severed head, and then Freddy like gives you a little wink.
Yeah. But let me walk back. Even before that, they did some. Let's just kind of go to your point where they were clever. It's like Jason starts, getting the advantage on Freddy, and he's like hacking away with it with his machete. And before he like takes off Freddy's like claw arm, Freddy. So Jason's like attacking with machete. So, but what does Jason? What does Freddy? Sorry, Jason starts hacking with his machete. So what does Freddy do? He takes his claws and he amputates on his right hand
Oh
and
yeah.
all of Jason's fingers. So all of a sudden it's like he is like this, and
Yeah,
it's
and he's
like,
just kind of
well,
looking
shit,
at
he
it,
can't hold a machete anymore, and it's like,
and
oh,
he's
that's brilliant,
and he's kind
actually.
of he's kind of just looking at his severed fingers, like, oh crap. Well, that's annoying.
Oh, what it doesn't phase Jason that much because he eventually does like he cuts off Freddy's claw hand, and Freddy starts like he goes to well before then like he's gonna attack, but Jason basically takes like the stump like the thing and he like jams it into Freddy's side. Uh, it both seems like both of them were kind of like out of it. Jason seems like he's maybe been defeated because Freddy emerges. He's about to kill Final Girl and Jason Ritter. And his one good arm is not claw hand. He's gonna kill them with Jason's machete, and then Jason appears again and impales Freddy through the chest with Freddy's severed claw hand
Yeah.
that he's jammed through, and then he falls back into the water.
And
And
then
then Final Girl takes the machete and cuts off Freddy's head, and then
yeah.
that's what leads to Jason walking out with his actually like I don't know how you have the grip strength because you have no fingers, but I guess you have like nubs, and so you are holding Freddy's severed head in your hand.
He might
But
have regenerated his fingers by that point. But like yeah,
I mean, it's
it
kind of vague as to
it
Jason's regenerative powers.
so it I'd say the fight is everything you'd want for the two of them. There's a lot of attention to detail. They don't really they don't really screw you on it. Like there's been some other stuff where it's like you get like 90 seconds and then they move on. It's a good. I would say their fight is on and off for like the last half hour of the movie. So, like I said, I didn't have high expectations the first time I saw this. I was worried it wouldn't hold up, and I had fun with it. Like I would say, it's not like some masterpiece of cinema. Like if you were to say like what would you rate it out of 10, I'd be like a 6 or a 6.5. Like it's solidly I would say it's slightly above average, especially for like a slasher movie. It's probably towards the higher end of like slasher films because like there's a lot of stuff they do they don't so like what a lot of slasher films struggle with, especially like is like the Nightmare and the Friday movies progressed is they just kind of paid lip service to the characters and giving them motivations and
Mm,
reasons to do what they did. And they because I think the joke is kind of like they wanted to do this movie and got the director. He's like, and he wrote an actual script for this movie instead of just like putting out some like piece of slop. But like, so everything like the characters act logically. There's motivations for what's going on. Like they don't kind of rush that stuff and just you know just be like, oh well, we'll just we just need them to be here. So who cares how they get there? Let's just put them there. Like they don't do that.
yeah, I would
And they melded the two franchises really well together too. I think that's another thing this movie did really well. Like they,
mm,
the way they had Freddy and Jason interact, like as properties, worked really well.
yeah. I would for 2/3 of the film, I probably would have rated it low, like 4 or 5, because I didn't care for it. But then once it got to like the final act, and it was actually the Freddy versus Jason fight, like I would probably put it like 6.5 out of 10. Like I enjoyed it. Like, is it a classic? Like, I don't know that it's a classic, but it is historically significant in that it does quite well meld the two franchises together. Excuse me. Um, and I think the fight was actually really fun. It wound up being like way better than I thought it would be.
I think
Like
it's
it
a
was enjoyable, and you brought up a great point. Like I think you said it quite best, that they were smart. They were smart with how they did it. It wasn't just like one villain got the better easily over the other one. They kind of like had them both have their strengths, and because of their strengths, they each kind of like took turns. It was like a well booked wrestling match,
yeah.
basically. That it's like you had some people have one guy had the heat, one guy had the other heat. Like they went back and forth until you finally had like a victor. But even though I guess you could say Jason probably came out the victor, it really was like 51-49%.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess they actually in comic book form did a sequel to this, but it was Freddy versus Jason versus Ash from the Evil Dead,
Oh yeah, I remember that.
which I was aware of, but I have not actually, I don't own or have read that comic book. But
No, because I'm kind of glad they didn't do a sequel to this. Like, I'm glad they didn't try and do like a Freddy vs. Jason 2 or something. Which but I think this movie is a good lesson
yeah,
for like a lot of like the current like movies that come out where it's obvious the writers hate like the source material and stuff. It's like, this is what happens when you put your best effort forward and you actually like pay attention to the franchises that you're working with, and you like you make smart choices and like try to make a coherent story.
yeah,
Because like this movie, like where I think um like I said, where this movie I think for all intents and purposes shouldn't have been like what it was.
hmm
I think it should have probably been an absolute piece of crap. Like, I went in expecting it to suck. Completely expected it to suck. And then like you come out like, and like I know you didn't like it as much as I did, but you kind of come out like, oh, that wasn't like bad. Like, that was way better than I thought it was gonna be.
I mean, I didn't like it as much as you did, but again, my final rating would be like a 6 or a 6.5 out of
That
10.
that's what I would give it.
So it's like that's still
I mean,
that would still be technically a passing grade, and
I would
it won me over in again the final act. If it was just like a shit final act, I'd be like, I don't really. But I thought that the final act was actually quite smart and fun. So it get kind of like a thumbs up there. Is it the again? There are horror movies from the like the well historically, but also like the last like 25 years. Is this like at the top of that? Like no,
no.
but is it is it decent? Like yeah, it's pretty decent, and
Like, if
considering how historically fine like irrelevant Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street are as like horror movie franchises, yeah, it was, and it's probably I have to rewatch them, but it probably is like in the at least the middle to upper tier of the Nightmare
I
franchise,
would say
and
it's the
I
only
have to watch. I have to
only
watch
one
the
and
Fridays
three would be
13th movies
better
again to
than
see.
it in Nightmare. Friday the 13th, I don't know where I'd rate it. I would say it'd probably be fourth ish in Friday the 13th movies, if I had to guess. But I'm gonna give it a 6.5. That's what I would give it, and it's 6.5 where my scale is a 5 would be like the most bog standard averagest movie to ever average. So it's like a tick above. That's when I rate something out of 10. Like, a 5 is average as average can be. So it's like slightly above average. So I'd give it a 6 or
What would
6.5.
you? What would be like well, if you have an example, what would be like a 5 movie
I
that
was
would be
just
like
trying to
bog standard?
I was just trying to think of what would be
Oh, okay.
bog standard. I don't think we've done a 5 on the show.
Hmm. I
Rocky
can think
4,
of one.
maybe?
Well, as a 5?
No, yeah, it's not. It's
Oh,
better than a 5.
I'd actually,
It's not a great
I
movie,
put
but
Rocky 4
it's.
higher.
I'd put it probably in about the 6.5 territory.
As an aside, have you seen I think it's styled as like the Sylvester Stallone cut or the Rocky Balboa cut or something of Rocky 4.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's much
Oh,
more interesting.
actually, it is much more interesting. It actually flips. It flips Ivan Drago's motivation to be like more about himself and his own ego, and it cuts out some of the
How about
weird shit about like with the robot.
how about I'm trying to think of 5. So how about the um Edward Norton Hulk movie is a 5.
I might rate it higher than a 5.
I'd put it about
Well,
6.
this starts getting to like that starts getting into like subjective. So I don't know.
I'd have to think because the
Anyway,
like it's
I'm putting you on the spot. We don't have to be like so on the spot,
I think
but
it's hard to I think it's hard to have like a bog standard 5 because like if you're talking about like what's the most boggest standard wrestling match that you would rate something against, I would struggle with that too because I'd be like I don't know.
so but that also kind of gets a little subjective too, because it's like to me, anything that's 3 stars and up would be a good to great to excellent match. 3
I
is like the level of good,
I'd say anything.
but
I'd say like a 2.5 star match is like the bog standard of average. But see, that's the problem
yeah,
though. That's the problem with like the 5 star rating for me because especially in wrestling, like I start to think a match has some merit to it at like 2 stars. Like it's not necessarily good, but there's like good qualities starting around 2 stars, and then like once you
yeah,
get over
but
2.5, you're starting to veer into good territory. Because like
yeah,
if you gave something 2 and 3, 4 stars, I'd say, oh, that's probably like it,
decent, yeah.
yeah, decent. But I also
But
I
but
also
there's also
go
levels to that because it's like if it's a 2 star match that went 30 minutes, it's like no. But if
no,
it's a 2 star match that went like 5 minutes, it's like that's perfectly fine.
yeah. And I tend to think of a 3 star match as a good match, but it's ultimately like a throwaway match that's not going to stick with you. That's kind of what I think of like a 3 star match. But like
Yeah,
I'm still
basically.
very old school in like how I approach star ratings though. So like if like I'm watching a TV show and like the main event's like a 2.5 star match, I'm still of that mentality of oh, that's not bad for like a TV match. That's kind of still how I approach that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a box standard movie is kind of hard because I think the problem is like for me at least, like I don't know if there's ever been like an average movie for me. Like things either veer into like the good to like I enjoyed it a lot or I completely hated it. Like I have very few in between movies I have like mid feelings on.
Mhm.
But I don't like
Yeah.
veer into this as much with movies, so like I don't have as granular a take as I do with wrestling where like we don't do snowflakes, but if you were to ask me like, well, what would separate something from being 3 and 3.5, I'd probably have opinions on that. Whereas like with a
Mhm.
movie, if you were like, well, what separates like when does like an above average movie start touching into good? And I'm like, I don't know. I just know it when I see it. Whereas wrestling, I might have like stronger opinions on it. But I think it's better than a lot of slasher movies. That's kind of where I came down on it.
Yeah. Again, I felt maybe I'm colored by how I feel like it's kind of that early 2000s era. Um, and I didn't like the first 2/3, but the final act again, I did think like really raise it up. So like 6.5. So it's I guess it's kind of like a thumbs up. Historically, again, for the two franchises, historically, this is a significant film.
Mm-hmm.
But I did think the final act, it did kind of like it positively like it favorably like reflected upon both. So
I will give it.
it's a thumbs up,
I will give
essentially,
it
in my
a
opinion.
thumbs
It's
up.
not like enthusiastic thumbs up,
Yeah,
but it's like it's a thumbs up. So
I will give it a thumbs up mostly for what I said, but also it gets. I'm comfortable with a thumbs up because it's only like a 90-minute movie. It's like 97 minutes.
it's like yeah, it's actually really
It's still
and it moves fairly briskly too. It's
yeah,
not like a 98 movie that drags.
yeah.
It's pretty quick.
Because it's still I don't know. It's before 2010, so movies were still allowed to be like 90 minutes or less.
That's a whole separate discussion, but yeah, like there are a lot of movies now. It's like, why is this movie like 2 hours long? It should not be,
Well, it sucks when you go to like the
especially if you feel like this. Like this is a horror movie. Like horror movies, unless they're really like avant-garde movies, you're trying to do a lot. It's like you should not be more than like 90 minutes.
yeah. It's
Like wrap this shit up, be
and it sucks when you
like cut
go
it
to
short.
like go to the movies with it now because it's like, oh well, if I go like after work or something, like I'm gonna kill my whole evening on that one movie, like
Mm.
because once you get through like all the trailers and stuff, you're looking at like two well over 2 hours, like up to 3 hours sometimes, which just as an adult like doesn't work well.
Oh, as a tangent or as an aside, Marvel, the Eternals movie, like 2.5 hours long. I still haven't finished it. And I think I watched like an hour and a half of it, and I'm like, why is this movie still going on? And
It's so that
I've
movie
never finished it, and I don't know if I've ever
that
finish it.
movie is so boring. It's so boring.
It is boring. And it's like it wasn't even like I watched an hour and a half straight, and it's like I punched out. Like I watched it in like probably 30-minute increments, and I was like, pause, and like came back to it, and it's like pause. Like I couldn't finish it,
It,
and I don't think I'm going to at
I
this
don't
point.
I don't know why they made a movie out of that because it's not like even in comic book circles those characters are like super popular or like even well known. Like I still don't know why they made a movie out of that, and they made it so boring.
I think they're trying to do something, but it just didn't work.
I know. Well, that is it for this week. I don't know what we're doing next week. Shad should be back. Um, I think we should all be here next week. I think it's getting towards the holidays, so there might be some weeks with oddball configurations of the group. But we'll be back. I know we're gonna probably hit the USWA again soon because we've been enjoying that. We might do something else, but we just decided to do this for something fun because Shad wasn't here, and I don't know. I just seen something about it and I wanted to watch it again. So that is Freddy vs. Jason. We give it a mild thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Still, a thumbs up is still a thumbs up.
Yeah. Like you could do far worse for like an hour and a half of your life to watch something.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Like, absolutely.
I'll throw a quickie recommend on top of this. If you haven't seen it yet, but on Netflix, The Killer that came out last year with Michael Fassbender is an enjoyable little romp of a film.
Oh really? I'd have to. I'll look that up.
Yeah, it's
Michael Fassbender's a good actor, so
yeah, it's a fun little romp of a movie. So if you're looking for something else to watch, I recommend that. And I don't think that's too long either. It might be like an hour and 45. But this has been the 4 Corners podcast. We've been in 2 corners this week, and I guess we can say Craig Bott was in the third, but you guys have definitely been in the fourth. So this has been the 4 Corners podcast. Thank you for watching as always, and we will catch you next